Had to look around for a second. Life's funny. We all have a perception of how time will go, and as time goes by, we think everything remains the same. But the truth is that something major has happened. Somewhere along the way, we stop playing. Not all at once and not without intention, but life gets louder and the joy of make believe fades. It's not as coherent, and eventually it just simply passes away. Today, I want to talk about why adults stop playing and how tabletop role playing games might be the key to bringing it all back.
Absorbing damage is the name of the game. From the claws of monsters or the heat from a ball of flame. Our strength in numbers is a roll of the dice.
Alrighty, so I'm Jonathan Albin, a creator of NycosRPG, and after 50 years behind the shield as a game master running adventure games, I've seen what play can do for people. Now, if this is a topic that interests you, make sure you hit subscribe. Let's try to bring the magic back. First of all, we're told, put away childish things. This phrasing is a little bit unfortunate, perhaps, because we should put away childish things like pettiness, meanness, and the kind of viciousness that happens because kids are unfiltered. But that's not what people think of when they think of putting away childish things. We think of putting away play. But play isn't immature, it's essential. Play is where we experiment, we learn, and we connect. Tabletop role-playing games give adults structured permission for this to happen again. So the idea of putting away childish things should be focused on putting away the petty and holding on to what is truly creative. Now, gotta get my buttons together here. When we talk about growing up is survival. Jobs, bills, caregiving to others, it's all important. But how they push play to the edge is a problem. Tabletop role-playing games are low-cost, high-return investments in joy and shared time. It's how we are able to connect in new and interesting ways, even amongst those who already have familiarity with one another. Growing up is an essential process, but the challenge with it is that we have to try to hold on to our genuineness that is inherent in our play mechanisms. But there are things that come up that cause us to see this as a threat or a challenge to our advancement. We really want to avoid looking like fools. When you are young and don't have an identity crisis and you're not really focusing on what other people think, there is no challenge. You can simply hold to your fantasies, your fictional beliefs, and there isn't anything that can tear them away from you. But as we become more self-aware, more conscious of what others think about the situation, and in particular think about us, we become more reticent. We fear these judgmental eyes, and we feel that the risk that is involved in holding on to the fantasy is too great. But what is that risk? That risk is actually the doorway to freedom. When you are involved in roleplay, whether it be in a tabletop roleplay game or in open imaginative creativity, just realize you need to unbutton your lives just enough to be able to breathe, because it's in this openness, this lack of fear, that we can actually innovate and be creative. But of course, this becomes a problem as life advances. those things that are essential are sometimes overwhelmed by those things that are immediate. We look at the idea of priorities and they adjust and drift and change over time. And we make decisions in a snap that implicate us for longer periods of time. Certainly, if you have a wife and children, there is a responsibility to being the breadwinner, the stalwart force in the world. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to let it overcome your opportunities to be creative. And yet, as the convenience of the creativity becomes itself a burden, in spite of all of the things we'd like to do, we put away those things that are innovative and instead reach for those things that are more expedient. Not only that, but the very idea of creativity being something natural becomes less so. We aren't involved with as much playfulness and creativity, and so therefore it becomes to be a dampered skill. We think of creativity really being in the hand, being a result of those who have the capability and the time to do it. So we look to those who are truly creative as those who have a talent for it. But that is itself a misnomer. Many adults don't think of themselves as creative. But play in its nature isn't about performance, it's about presence. You simply are there to participate. Tabletop role-play games reward the concept and ideas that you come up with, not the polish of its delivery. In other words, we surrender our ability to be creatives in the name of providing better opportunities to appreciate the created, and that itself is derivative and less effective and less useful than we might otherwise think. As a matter of fact, the very mechanisms by which we play become the problem. We are concerned with what works versus what is enjoyable, and we simply put away the things that are too difficult, things that take up our time but don't have an immediate and urgent value. That means that we surrender our creativity and we give it up in favor of those things that are necessary. So sure, you might have liked Tuesday night out with the guys, but Tuesday happens to be recital night or happens to be performance night for something at school, and all of a sudden those things that were essential now get prioritized. And so we outgrow the very mechanisms because they are too burdensome to maintain while we are pursuing, quote, this life of ours. Of course, time itself is a factor, and as we grow up and grow out into the world and expand, our world changes. It gets larger and smaller. We gain new friends and our old friends move on. If we have no group, we have no game, right? But this is where the error is. Role-playing games, especially tabletop ones, can be played nowadays not only through online communities, local game stores, and utilizing more flexible rule sets that give you less work for the amount of outcome. The move, for example, to the OSR mechanisms have made for faster introduction and faster play than ever, and that gives us back the opportunity to really enjoy the world that we have been creating. Well, of course, if we have spent our time in a world handling new routines and new mechanisms, they become the new norm, and you literally pave over the paradise that was your childhood. You close it off in favor of the expediency of the new patterns. And the challenge with any routine is it fundamentally becomes a rut. We literally stop wondering about things. We stop literally accepting the wonder that is, and instead we find ourselves looking for what little happiness we can find within our routines rather than struggling to find outlets for that creativity beyond. We also become static. These new routines have time restrictions and limitations. They still have a framework that we set ourselves against, and they become the new stabilized form. And that process becomes more rigid the more time we pass. We no longer look at the opportunity for a half an hour or an hour for creativity. Instead, we block out those times to simply rest. We are becoming more frame bound, more calcified, more rock like in our procedures, simply because these new routines become more rigid and they do have more of these urgent threads that we've sewn into it. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. Tabletop games do remind us that joy isn't just a side dish, it really is a main course, but we have to literally carve out new spaces to place this new hobby. And that is where we are in the world today. We are juxtaposed between the static that we have become familiar with and a new regime, a new concept that has to accept different places for creativity. We also forget how much we need it. We accept the idea of endurance, but we're not seeing it as a negative, but as a positive. To endure something is to put up with it, to allow it to occur. But we accept this new endurance as our lot in life. We may have a feeling of quiet desperation because we are missing that which was instrumental in our happiness at youth. But we have now built a framework of stability that is our new worlds. Now, this challenge has left us with a problem. The reality is that we deserve joy. We deserve it not as a reward, but as essentially our birthright. We were made to be creative. We were made to have fun. So if you stop playing, that's okay. But the table is still here. The players are still here, and the dice are still warm. The table in the door is still wide open to this play environment. The reality is that despite us having painted ourselves into a corner in many ways, this isn't the end. I built NycosRPG for people just like us. People who love stories, love people, and maybe just need someone to say that it's okay to come back to the table. And if that sounds like you, subscribe to this channel, share these videos, and let's keep the adventure going. I'm Jonathan Albin. This has been NycosRPG, and let's play.